We are here. All right, it's working.
There it is.
Thank you
It's
for
working.
putting up with us as we deal with some tech issues.
Oh, my God.
Some leftover turkey
Yes.
programming,
And just
apparently.
and the computers are in charge anymore. So it's amazing because given the number of years I spent in this industry, the amazing amount of stuff I can't do anymore that we used to be able to do. There's things like, well, 15 years ago I know how to do this stuff, but the computer doesn't let me do it anymore.
overlords.
Yeah, exactly.
We
so
had
there's
to
stuff
do
I can't do.
apparently some sacrifices to get things right.
Yes, we did. Yeah, and the hamster had fallen asleep in the control room back there, so I had to feed him and wake him up and get him running on the generator again.
Things are changing over at the Colorado Parks and Wildlife. Jeff Davis, who led the wolf reintroduction efforts, now stepping down as agency director. What is happening there? This has been an area of a lot of focus, a lot of contention, and he's been doing an absolutely fantastic job tracking a lot of the changes that are happening there. Is Dan Gates, executive director of the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management. He joins us now. Good morning, Dan. Thank you for taking time this morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit of who Jeff Davis is and what he did and what's changed over at Colorado Parks and Wildlife.
Well, Jeff has been the director for Colorado Parks and Wildlife since May of 2023, and he was hired from the state of Washington as the conservation director up there, and was chosen to complete and follow through with the voter-mandated Proposition 114, which was introducing wolves from 2020, the ballot initiative that everybody's aware of. And, I think it took him about a year to get his feet underneath of his butt, just because of a government agency and learning the hoops and hurdles and ins and outs, and then having to deal with the federal component of the Endangered Species Act and all the other aspects that go into trying to reintroduce or introduce a endangered species. First time in history that it's been done by a voter mandate, and this is not in my mind a easy administration to work within when I'm talking about the current gubernatorial administration. And I think Jeff got to a point to where he was challenged at so many different levels of what the agenda was by the particular governor and the first gentleman, Marlon Reese, and all of the nuances that went into not only the wolf introduction, but all the other things that this administration would like to see happen within Colorado Parks and Wildlife Management, that it became a more bigger and bigger challenge as things got deeper and deeper into the process of completing Governor Polis's term coming up in January 12th of 2027.
That's Dan Gates. He's executive director for Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management. We're talking Jeff Davis, who led Colorado Parks and Wildlife's wolf reintroduction efforts, now stepping down. Can you give folks an update, Dan, on where and how the wolf reintroduction's going? We see the headlines, but we live on the Front Range, so we probably don't deal with it as much as people on the western slope have to deal with it, but it costs too much. Seems like the wolves are dying. It seems like ranchers are losing lots of livestock. From my perspective, I could be wrong, but it doesn't seem like it's working all that well. Your thoughts, sir?
Well, there's a lot of successes if you look at the way that the wolf program has been implemented, and there's a lot of befuddlement or possible failures. And I think that anybody that's interested in this, that's been following it for quite some time, can say what I mean by successes and go, well, that's not a success. Well, it is in the sense of a voter mandate of actually bringing wolves on the ground and having litters of pups be born and trying to establish a population that is suitable according to the wolf management plan that I sat on the stakeholder advisory group for 16 of 18 months. And there's a lot of the positivity from the wolf proponents. Then there's a lot of negativity from the wolf opponents, and some sportsmen and the ag industry and even legislators and to some degree commissioners and administrators have a lot of different opinions about how this is played out. But when it really gets down to the grassroots side of it, guys, is the fact that there's so many parts of the puzzle and tools in the toolbox that maybe weren't implemented and put into place prior to a lot of these introduction practices taking place. And I believe 100% in the science-based wildlife management of an agency that has the tools within their grasp to be able to utilize for the betterment of wildlife management and taking into consideration the people and the stakeholders in the process. However, when you have undermining manipulation from agenda-driven politicians, it plays it and makes it hard for scientists and biologists and administrators to do what is necessary when it comes to the boots on the ground, everyday implementation of not just a wolf program, but you talk about mountain lions, what we've dealt with in the past, and you look at the beaver management plan that has been created and the fur bear management plan that is being worked on. When you get people's perspectives about things that they have an opinion on, but no factual basis on, and it starts to undermine the professionalism of organizations and entities and employees, it can be nothing more than a debacle in the end. And there might be some good parts and bad parts to it, but the overwhelming concept of it is, if it's not done for the betterment of wildlife and habitat and natural resources, it's not done overall in a common practice of science.
That's Dan Gates, Executive Director for the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management, joining Jeff and Bill live. We are talking about Jeff Davis stepping down a wolf management program. Now, it's something very interesting there. I want to ask you, Dan, in your opinion, what could have and should have been done with the wolf program? We know that hindsight is 2020. There's a reason why the Denver Broncos have film study on Wednesday to look back at what they did the previous week. So if we gave you the Jeff and Bill magic wand, understanding hindsight's always 2020, and some of these things couldn't have been predicted, when we started out. But in your opinion, if we gave you the magic wand and you could design the program as you wanted, what could have and should have been done in your opinion?
Well, I think the first and foremost would be a level of transparency and accountability, and given the agency the unequivocal ability to be able to do what was necessary in the steps that they needed to do it in. There was a lot of missteps, and some of that came directly from higher ups that were in hopes of trying to get wolves introduced and on the ground before specific deadlines. And whether you can get into the political side of this however much you want, but the fact of the matter is, Jeff Davis is probably responsible for some of these issues, but he's darn sure not responsible for all of them. And based upon our inner working relationships and what we've had, Mr. Davis was given a task and not all of the tools in the toolbox. And it just goes in to show that political agendas do not fall into line when it comes to the science side of managing wildlife. And I think, communication with the landowners and the stakeholders and the ag producers, full transparency with the legislature, having tools in the toolbox that could be implemented immediately, whether it was range riders or flattery or any other tools that are part of this supposed non-lethal control program, and allowing the landowners and the stakeholders, the ag producers themselves, to be in immediate conversation with the upper levels of administrative staff with Colorado Parks and Wildlife and the Department of Natural Resources, to know what was going on, when it was going on, and to be able to immediately attempt to try to address things in real time, as opposed to a knee-jerk reaction going, well, 2 months after the fact or 3 months after the fact, we're still trying to figure out a way to be able to do this. You mentioned the Denver Broncos. You don't start a Super Bowl winning team and just get on the field and run to the Super Bowl. You have to have all the tools in place. And I think that Colorado Parks and Wildlife had the ability to have those tools in place, but they weren't actually allowed to have those tools in a functioning capacity. And I think that, between the voter initiative, between the questions on financing and compensation, and the pros and cons of this introduction process, not only has it created a stress factor within the agency, it's created a debacle as far as the time incurred just on wolves, pedestalizing wolves, and taking so much time and effort away from the other 960 species of wildlife in the state of Colorado. And so, first and foremost, if I was king for a day, which I don't want to be, have all the tools in place, have all the resources in place, and give the authority of the individuals that are boots on the ground to be able to do what's necessary and act in real time, as opposed to thinking about, well, we didn't think that was going to happen, or we knew it was going to happen, we didn't have the tools in place.
That's Dan Gates, Executive Director of the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management. What's happening right now with the wolf reintroduction program? I've heard that the Trump administration's not allowing the wolves from Canada. I could be wrong on that, but then other states aren't interested in sending wolves here either. What's currently happening?
Well, Director Nesvik from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service did send a letter to Director Davis back in October, and it specifically highlighted a lot of the concerns that the ag community and some legislators and some current gubernatorial candidates have brought up. Greg Lopez, for instance, had reached out to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on several occasions to be able to turn around and try to get some federal intervention or at least observations and acknowledgement that was going on, because this is a endangered or threatened species in different locales. And what they ended up doing was bringing wolves in from out of country. And there's contention or there's questions or concerns that maybe that wasn't done in full transparency and accountability. I think some of that stuff will play out in the long run. But the biggest thing is there was the last paragraph in that letter that said something to the effect of about a cease and desist to be able to bring further wolves in from those other locations. And if anybody paid attention, going back to early November, Director Davis had presented to the Washington Game and Fish Commission up there, asking for wolves from them, which they denied on a vote, I believe, of 8-1. And I think that was the last-ditch effort to be able to turn around and try to get wolves from in-country, because other states that have already denied the opportunity and tribal relationships have already denied the opportunity to bring further wolves in. So it's a lot of, I think, finger pointing and he said, she said, woulda, shoulda, coulda. But at the end of the day there's a lot more eyes on this subject than what people originally intended to have. And I think the higher-ups in this particular administration weren't happy with the results that Director Davis was willing to or could be able to try to complete.
Where do you think this goes? Do you think they continue to try this effort? I've heard arguments that the mandate via the ballot initiative was that we did an initial reintroduction, that it wasn't an ongoing effort to reintroduce. Is that true? Where do you see this going?
Well, I don't think that's fully true. I mean, there's specificity within the management plan about X number of wolves over a certain period of time to be able to establish a viable population. And to be able to do that, you have to have genetic diversity. So, if you're looking at from the science side of it, look, and I'm going to preface this. I wasn't a proponent of wolf introduction through a ballot initiative. If they came in here naturally by the cycle of attrition, I and 99% of the sportsmen and ag producers that I've been dealing with have no problem with that, as long as the state and the agency had the ability to manage those populations accordingly for the betterment of the wolf populations and all the other wildlife species and the people that would be dramatically affected or benefit off of that immediate natural translocation, so to speak. If you look at what's happening, and we talked about Director Davis resigning, but here recently, sports person's representative Murphy Robinson just resigned off of the Parks and Wildlife Commission. And it shows that there's a concern or maybe a dysfunction in the administrative side of this from the higher ups working its way down. And I think that, while I won't speak on behalf of Commissioner Robinson, I think the integrity and the professionalism and civility and decorum that he brought to the table will be missed significantly, because he brought some logic and tried to hold people accountable. And for whatever reason, he decided to step down for a variety of things, I would believe. And there's been comments about conflict of interest or something. This is not something that is good for the agency in Colorado to be able to turn around and have this sort of turmoil that has disrupted an agency, a $400+ million agency nonetheless, to be able to turn around and manage Colorado's wildlife resources appropriately.
That's Dan Gates, Executive Director of the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management. We're talking the resignation of Jeff Davis, Colorado Parks and Wildlife's Wolf Reintroduction Director. And, he's overseeing that process. He now takes on a role that's kind of advisory, and there's been some headlines about that as well. So he's sticking around. The government's still sending him a check, but not directing the efforts anymore. Is that correct?
That's correct. They just recently appointed a acting director, Major General Laura Clellan, I believe. We just had a meeting with her the other day for the first time, and we're hopeful that she is looking to step in and kind of right the ship temporarily until they put a new director, a permanent director in place. But you're right. Director Davis is now taking the role into a policy advisory capacity consultant deal or something with the Department of Natural Resources. And from what I've seen, and I haven't seen the document myself, but from what I've seen through the news, that's supposed to go through May 15th. Well, I'm not saying that Jeff Davis said anything or that Director Dan Gibbs, executive director for the Department of Natural Resources, have said anything to this line, but I could only see this from the outside of what we've been dealing with, and we've been intimately involved in so many different levels of this that when you smell smoke, oftentimes there's fire, and when there's a dead smell, there's a rat in the wood pile. And I think that there's the combination of both. There's a dead smell and there's smoke into this, and I just can't believe that with what Director Davis's intent is to do what was best for the wolf introduction, do what was best for the agency and the ability to manage wildlife in our state parks, and the betterment for the state residents and the visitors alike, that he just upped and decided to go. Well, the truth came out through a document that I saw that Kyle Clark did the other night, and it said in lieu of termination. Well, whether it's a buy-off or whether it's a placating to the process or whatever, it's not a good eye and a good vision for these type of things to happen when there's so much questioning and concern about, the ability to work for the benefit of the stakeholders and the landowners and the ag producers that I mentioned. But just the agency itself, the morale of the agency itself has got to be in turmoil when they don't know who their director is going to be, and they know that the director that was there before couldn't have made the decisions completely on his own because there was a lot of maybe hand-holding or manipulation. And it just makes it a tough deal when you're talking about the importance of Colorado's wildlife resources and what Coloradans expect to have their wildlife managed as.
I mean, do you think the manipulation's coming from the first gentleman? Is it Marlon Reese? I think maybe is his name, who is the husband to Jared Polis. Is there a lot of influence coming from him?
I believe there's a hell of a lot of influence coming from first gentleman Marlon Reese. His involvement, not only through the selection process through the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission, recognizing that he is a staunch animal rights extremist and does not believe in consumptive use, does not believe in the ability for people to be able to go out and so much live off the land, but be part of the system to provide their own food source and an economic benefit coming back into an agency that manages that 960 species of wildlife, 78 of which are game species. All of the money generated within Colorado Parks and Wildlife from a hunting license goes to all wildlife species. It just doesn't go to the game management side of it. And so the constant inflow or influx of Marlon Reese's participation is undeniable for anybody that's been sitting around the table and paying attention like what we have over the course of the last 7+ years, at least since this governor has been in office. And some of us have been around since going back to 2007, 2008. This is as bad of a management protocol as what we have seen at any level. And when you hear it from other states and you hear it from people that aren't in our circle because they're in another part of the conversation for habitat and wildlife management, it's frustrating because that's like taking somebody off the street that's washing windows on a corner and just saying, hey, what do you think about this? And this is what we want to get done. And that's the person making the decision.
Now, Dan Gates,
the biologists within Parks and Wildlife yes, sir.
Yeah, no, I just want to interrupt you there for a second. I apologize. Dan Gates is the executive director for the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management, joining Jeff and Bill live right now. We're discussing the wolf reintroduction program and Jeff Davis stepping down as director of the program. I want to just get your personal opinion on the why Marlin, the first gentleman, was given so much input and or influence on this program. I personally find it rather odd because he's unelected. I understand the idea of the person in a first spouse role, whatever it might be, having a cause celebre, having something that they want to champion. We see that even as far as the first ladies and second ladies. They normally have something. So I understand that Marlin might want to have this sort of a cause. But in your opinion, why do you feel that he was given so much, and I'm using air quotes, power over the program and so much influence, especially given that it is a government-run program? Normally, in these situations with first spouses, we don't see them have this much command and control over government programs per se. When you were talking about it, I harken back to
Hillary.
That's where I was going. This is why we do the show. Right there in the eyes. Yeah, Hillary, when she was first lady, that's exactly where I was going. I was setting the table, and Jeff I alley-ooped it, and he dunked it. So, Dan, in your opinion, why do you feel he was given so much influence?
Well, strictly my opinion, but, I want to preface that with a couple different things. For people that don't know, and it's not that big of a deal, but I was actually appointed by Governor Polis to another term. I was first appointed by Governor Hickenlooper, and then appointed by Jared Polis to sit on the Habitat Stamp Committee, which is a governor appointed and Senate confirmed. I was also appointed by Director Prinsloo to sit, Director Broscheid and then Director Prinsloo to be able to sit on the Wildlife Council, the Colorado Wildlife Council for Colorado Parks and Wildlife. Currently, I sit as a sportsman's chair for the Sportspersons Roundtable, and I've been on a plethora of different other capacities that gives me a little bit of a different opinion when you get a chance to see people pushing agendas or a lot of things that are happening that other people wouldn't see normally on a day-to-day operational effort. I believe that when Governor Polis was elected, that Marlin Reese saw an opportunity because of what had been attempted to transpire over the course of the previous 10 or 15 or 20 years, going all the way back to the 1990s on the bear initiative of banning spring bear hunting and the utilization of hounds and baits. That was in 1992. That was Initiative 10. And then the trapping initiative in 1996. I think that the first gentleman has the same ideology of the people that started those type of conversations. And if you look at the circles that the first gentleman runs in, and it's the Center for Biological Diversity and the Humane World for Animals and Project Coyote and the Southern Plains Land Trust, where we have commissioners that are involved in the Prairie Protection. You look at Cats Aren't Trophies. The first gentleman was very much a supporter of banning the harvest and management of bobcats and mountain lions, which was Proposition 127 back in 2024, that we defeated. His particular interest in what he calls animal welfare is what we look at as animal activism, and he would like to see as much as what he can accomplish during this administration. And I think, I don't want to speak on behalf of the governor or the first gentleman, but if you have a platform and you have the resources to be able to turn around and either monetize or facilitate and implement that platform, they're going to do it at whatever level they possibly can. And if you want to use the old adage that I have heard most of my life, happy wife, happy life. And I think in this case, the spouse of the governor has that same mentality: is I'm going to get what I want to get done, and if the governor gives him the free rein to be able to do it, he's going to continue to do it.
That's Dan Gates, Executive Director of the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management. Dan, I've known Perry Will for a long time. I know Perry was with a game warden for 43 years with Colorado Parks and Wildlife. And the sense I always got from people that work with Colorado Parks and Wildlife is that they just love to be outdoors more than anything else. They love the animals. They love the great Colorado wildlife, and they don't necessarily want to jump through politics and push agendas. When you have this amount of political activism coming from the top to be forced upon Colorado Parks and Wildlife, what does that do to the game wardens and the people that work within this industry?
Well, I think, wildlife politics is something that has transformed over the course of the last 15 or 20 years a lot more than what it used to be. And people figured out that there was an opportunity for them to engage at different levels to get their points across, their wishes, wants, and desires, because of what is considered under the North American model of wildlife conservation, the public trust doctrine. Wildlife belongs to everybody, but not everybody has the same type of interest in it. And we know that wildlife, in a sense of a commodity, pays for the management of itself through license purchases and through excise taxes under the Dingell-Johnson and Pittman-Robertson Acts on the federal government side. And so you talk about, the game warden side of it. These people that I've been around for the better part of my adult life, since I was 12 years old, were career-minded. This is their livelihood. They care about wildlife and natural resources. And what you're seeing in the agencies around the Western United States is this transition of ideologies amongst employees, more often than not, that become a day-to-day job for them as opposed to a lifestyle and a livelihood and an actual career. There's a lot of people that jump in and say, I want to do this, and then you see them 2, 3, 4, 5 years. They decide that's not for them, and they go completely to a different field, maybe even move out of state. When you see the political overriding that goes on, and not just Colorado, it's happening in Washington and Oregon and California and New Mexico and a lot of different other places. When you see that happen, it has to bring a cause for concern to employees that are living, breathing, eating, and sleeping and drinking this wildlife philosophy about we're the stewards of wildlife. And to be able to do that in a state with 5.9 million people and almost 90 million annual visitors, they need to know that the higher ups are supporting them on the ground to be able to do what's necessary. And you got to understand, it's not like a cookie cutter deal, because each individual region in the state is different. It's different for the topography. It's different from the geography. It's different from the demographics. It's different from the public recreation. It's different from the type of animals that they have and the winters that they get. And the guys on the ground, the district wildlife managers, area wildlife managers, regional managers, the scientists and biologists have to know that they have full unequivocal support to be able to pull off that task so they can do what's appropriate for generations, genetic diversity, and generations of wildlife if we're going to continue to maintain these populations in perpetuity.
Dan Gates, Executive Director of the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management. You get a sense of the vast experience he has, the expertise he has, and he does a wonderful job on social media. Dan, how can people continue to follow you and get updates on all these issues?
Well, I appreciate the plug for that, guys. Through the Proposition 127 campaign, we didn't ever intend on doing a lot of what we're doing afterwards, but we have a podcast called Through the Gates. It's Through the Gates to Save the Hunt, and you can find that on YouTube or any of the Spotify, any of the platforms or formats that anybody would listen to. You can also contact us through SaveTheHuntColorado.com. That's the website we have. We're always looking for funds. We, not just a fundraising deal here, but we are the only organization in the state of Colorado that provides full-time lobbying representation at the Colorado State Capitol for sportsmen and women. We are partners with 23 other organizations on a coalition called the Colorado Wildlife Conservation Project. But we do what we do because we are a 501c4. We're also on Instagram at c.r.w.m, and we are on Facebook at the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management. We just want to do what's right for Colorado's natural resources and try to adhere to the North American model of wildlife conservation and the statutory obligation of Colorado Parks and Wildlife of the statute of 33-1101. And people need to understand that what we have it because of a reason that started 125 plus years ago when this agency was created, and on the backs and the shoulders of the stewards like Teddy Roosevelt and the Pinchots and the Grinnells and the Hornadays and the Audubons. What we're trying to do is maintain all of this in a responsible level for future generations of wildlife and people alike.
Dan, you're doing a great job. We sure appreciate your time this morning. We'll continue. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS.
Thank you to Dan Gates, Colorado's for Responsible Wildlife Management, joining us now. Bill, it's time for Mr. Thorpe's You Choose the News.
Yes, it is that time of the morning where we take our careers in our tiny little hands. It is You Choose the News, America's favorite fake radio news game show. As always, I have just browsed the interwebs for mere moments this morning to find really dumb stories about us humans and then given them even more ridiculous headlines so that we can play this fake radio news game show. Why would we do this? Because those in charge are not awake at this time. Alrighty, as always, Blake Olson joins us from the news department. Jeff is in the studio. Okay, and gentlemen, here are today's stories. Headline number 1, nom nom nom. Headline number 2, quick, duck. Headline number 3, behold the mystery. And headline number 4, wanna flirt?
Quick, duck.
Yes, quick, duck. A woman has filed a lawsuit after she said she was hit by a duck at SeaWorld. She rolled the Mako roller coaster at SeaWorld. The theme park's lawyer said that it wasn't a duck at all. But it doesn't really matter. She says that she was hit by a duck. They say it's a snowy egret, but the issue really is the bird's presence in the air. The lawyers for SeaWorld say that we can't control birds in the air. Sorry about that. Whether or not there's water nearby, it negates any plausible relationship between SeaWorld's premises and the plaintiff's alleged injury. We can't clear the air of birds. That's kind of stupid. But she still says SeaWorld is responsible for the injuries. However, it's interesting to note that at the park, she refused any medical treatment because she told the people she didn't want to miss out on riding the rides. But then she went and sought medical treatment the next day, and all of a sudden, lawsuit appears. Ta-da! Wonder how that works.
I'm sure there was a lawyer there.
I
Yeah,
know,
continue,
exactly.
sir.
Alrighty, Blake. Nom nom nom. Behold the mystery or wanna flirt.
Nom nom nom.
Nom nom nom. Or he's a bad egg. A New Zealand man has been charged for theft after he allegedly stole a diamond-studded locket in a really unusual way. It's a Fabergé egg locket valued at about $20,000. Police went to Partridge Jewelries in central Auckland. The 32-year-old now needs to undergo an assessment to figure out exactly what he did with the egg. Now, the egg is set with 60 white diamonds, 15 blue sapphires, and according to the jeweler's website, opens to reveal an 18-karat gold miniature octopus inside. It is the famous Octopussy egg inspired by the 1983 James Bond film of the same name. Where's the egg? In his tum-tum. When he was going to steal it, he went and...
Brilliant.
Yeah, so he's got it in his tummy, and they're doing a medical assessment to see if they can get it out, or they're going to have to wait until someone else has to go fishing. Yeah, okay. Final choice. Jeff, behold the mystery or wanna flirt?
Want to flirt?
Yeah, you want to flirt? Well, somewhere out there, there's a woman that just has rejected another can of Monster Energy drink. So Monster Beverage Corporation is introducing Flirt. F-L-R-T, a woman-focused brand of zero energy drinks. Yeah, this is stupid. Okay, back to you.
Speaking of stupid,
Yes.
the Jeff and Bill Show will continue.
KNUS. We'll be right back.